all about that. So because that's one of it has about 16 different versions that have been created, and I want to talk about that a little bit later. But talking about the fun things, let's talk about a little bit of one of the biggest movies we've ever talked about, and that's Lord of the Rings. This was the fights that Bob Anderson did, and as those of you know, Bob Anderson was actually one of my teachers, and not only did he teach me, the funny thing about Bob was not only did he teach me about sword work, but sometimes he taught me about life and how you don't have to be a not nice person. I'm going to say that in the nicest way when you're working, and especially when you become better known or famous or however you want to talk about it, how you can still stay down to earth and real and respectful and those types of things of people. And Bob was a very nice man, and God bless his soul. He was taught me a lot. So obviously he did Lord of the Rings fights, and I can tell, having worked with him for a while, I can tell his style. And sometimes I must be honest, sometimes I loved what he did, and occasionally I thought, oh, that was just for flair, and that was just for, you wouldn't necessarily do that. But Bob was really working for the movies, and that's back in the early 2000s and the 90s, and those types of versions now have gotten a little realer. If you notice fights today, they've gotten a little bit more intense. They are shot differently. If you look at a regular fight from Atomic Blonde, which is a fantastic example of new age type of filming, where it doesn't look like there is a cut for about 5 minutes in the action, or maybe even more, and it goes from going upstairs to fist fights to gunplay, down the stairs into a room, from crashing things against people's faces, knocking stunt guys out, shooting them, and it's one take after another, and it is an extremely well done piece, and I think a standard for some of the newer fights that were to come after it was filmed. So today we're seeing a slightly different version of that, and that's why I've actually gone into looking at sword work, for instance, a little bit more of the reality of sword work. Obviously, you have a lot of the anime versions today that are fantastic. So I think it's fun to have. But let me go back to Lord of the Rings for a second, because I have some of my favourite fights out of that. I actually highlighted something a couple of weeks ago about that. We've talked about those before. The fight when what's his name? He gets killed. Anyway, but the reality of the amount of elements that are done and layered into a really good action sequence are the relationships, the sword work, the creation of the bad guy and the elements that are created around it. Those are really the things that Lord of the Rings did very well, and Bob's the fights were very well done in that respect. Except a couple of times you're like, well, why did he spin around there, and why did he do this? And we'll notice that again today when we talk about the Peter Pan stuff, because it was some of it's very much evident in those types of fights. Now, somebody asked me, one of the questions we've had this morning was, what was the original storyline of the Source? Well, storyline of the Source, well, it was, the storyline of the Source was the same as it was, in the sense that there was this entity that was more powerful than anybody could ever imagine. However, I think that changed along the way as to the execution of it and what it was actually created in being. The problem was that the script that I originally saw was not the script, or actually, sorry, the scenes I originally saw were not the script that I was given. And it's funny, I just recently saw something I put on my vlog, which was talking about diversity in film and how it's gone so far the other way. And the same thing applies. The reason that applies is business. And a lot of people in those positions of business, the executives, etc., look at it as to making money or letting the business side of things work more to their favor. The source was one of those issues. We had Peter Davis, who dealt with the business side of things, who was in contact with Lionsgate, who had talked with Lionsgate regarding, what should be and shouldn't be, and how he sold the idea of them distributing the movie, and the actual reality of what we were trying to do at the time. Peter Davis had, not Peter Davis, Bill Panzer had a little accident when we were at Cannes, broke his hip, had to have bone replaced, broke his neck, or in the vertebrae somewhere in the back of his neck, and then had to have a bone replaced from his hip. So he was on the mend at that point, and therefore the business side of things was taken over, and the script took us 3 or 4 months just to get 3/4 of the way through it by the time we started filming. And therefore, when we got to the point of filming it, and there were obvious issues, I think the ideas were there, but they weren't executed properly. And we had an issue at one point where there, in the storyline, there were the horses, the motorbikes, the fights, 5 or 6 different immortals and storylines going, and we had to shoot that in one day. And I was like, this 2.5 pages of action sequences will not be done in one day. And I had a very lengthy discussion with Peter Davis when I was in Lithuania before we shot this, and Bill Panzer was not available at the time, and I said, we can't do this. And he said, yes, we can, Adrian, we can. We've got a really competent stunt coordinator who's also doing the second unit. And I said, well, I'll be honest with you, Peter, I've done a lot of TV, which is done on a very tight budget and a very fast pace. And the amount of stuff you have in here, I don't think we're going to get it. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Well, we shoot that day and we get half of it. And Peter Davis calls me up, why didn't we get it? I said, well, because I hate to tell you I told you so, but I told you so. You didn't listen to me. A good captain or leader listens to the people around him who have had that experience and then makes those decisions. And I just don't think he made the decision based on the effect it would have on the storyline. It just was about, okay, we've told Lionsgate we're going to have all this bang explosions and all this stuff, so we're going to give them that. But you can't do it on that budget. You can't do it in that time. So what ended up happening, and some of you know or may not know this, I had an agreement with Peter saying that, all right, allow me to shoot. You're going to need another day. They had another day coming up. Allow me to shoot the things that we are missing on second unit while first unit is shooting. Now, the difference between first unit and second unit is that first unit is a much larger crew. It has all the bigger lights, etc. We were in a forest. The second unit has a smaller crew and usually takes the smaller pieces of action. It would take. The second unit sometimes does larger pieces, but in reality in ours, it had a much smaller crew and we were doing pieces of the action. Where that worked was we had a forest. In the middle of the forest was a pathway or a road, dirt road basically. First unit was shooting on this side. Second unit was shooting on this side with me. So every time, and where it became problematic because we didn't have enough lights to actually, give to second unit. We were using some of the lights that first unit had. Anytime first unit was actually working, we had to stop because you couldn't do it for sound. So we would set something up, we would wait, we'd get it done, and then we would shoot. So I went in and shot a lot of the second unit stuff, which was, some fights, some things with motorbikes, some all that type of stuff. I would shoot that section of it. And eventually we kind of got it, but did it work? I don't know. I mean, I personally think the whole end of the source was not thought out enough, in the sense that we had this idea of him fighting the entity in this other realm, so that the speed would be one of the things. But the way it was sped up not enough, in my opinion. It should have had. It looked like a what would I call it? Like a comedy skit in a sense, because it was all this very fast thing. But it shouldn't have been. It should be and done like it's done today. In a sense, the ideas were advanced ahead of the time of what the ideas of way to shoot action or way to actually deliver this process was able to do. So today, if you look at it, the cuts, you get cuts where you're in the middle of an action, it moves to something else, but it's okay because your mind is trying to catch up with the action, but moving really quick from one to the next. Or like in any of the Avengers movies, sometimes it goes through something and things are moving out of space, the things are breaking and you're in the middle of it cutting, and so the effects that you're able to do today are greater because the technology is better. And I think the ideas were there back in the early 2000s when we did it, but the technology and the way to deliver it was not. So, I think some of it was the idea as the source went through, it got the competency of the delivery of the idea got less and less. So I think it lost it about 3/4 of the way through. So that was my take of it at that point. The other thing we've got is I want to talk to you a little bit about. Somebody asked me what my favourite time period was, and I'm going to get to Pan in a second because that one is going to be kind of fun to do. But what was my favourite time period in Highlander? What was my personal favourite? Was a question we have coming up. And again, if any of you have any others from the things I'm saying, we'll try and get them on the screen. So, favourite time period. You know what? I love going back to MacLeod's roots. It was really a fun period of time because I always felt it was his roots, and that's why I enjoyed directing Homeland, because a lot of the time that was who he was. That's what his essence was. So I really like going back to that time period, but for no other reason than that, because Scottish time periods was fun, but it wasn't as glamorous as what we've been led to believe. And I really enjoyed when we went back to the French 18th century time beings, when MacLeod at that point was more flamboyant, and he was trying to live life to the fullest and having fun with it. And what was the point of this? And I'm going to go drink, and I'm going to go womanizing, and I'm going to go fight, and I'm going to do this. I'm not going to kill anybody, but I'm going to have fun doing it. So that was kind of his fit. So when you have MacLeod, like in the Saving Grace, when he comes with a little goatee mustache, I love that kind of flair and stuff on it. It was kind of fun to do. It's just a little bit more fun. And, so as a time period, that was interesting. The problem is that we always romanticize time periods in our minds and movies to show us this type of time period. But in reality, what was it really like at that time? So what was my favorite time period? I can't tell you in that respect, because I don't know the reality of that situation. The glamorized or the Hollywood version of it might be something a little bit different, because we see the Three Musketeers as all the guys in the beautiful outfits and they're moving their weapons, and it's all about honor, and it's all about this. Well, to be totally honest, mankind has never changed its ways in thousands of years to a degree. We've done it in increments. We haven't done it in leaps and bounds. We've done it. We behave the same, whether we're jealous, whether we're vengeful, whether we're angry. It's the same human emotion we've had. So that time period was no different than this one in the way that we reacted as human beings. The only difference is the technology. We have toilets today. We have sanitary wipes. We have masks to stop us from getting infections. We have all these lovely things, whereas back then they didn't have them. So how did you deal with that back then? So that's kind of my thing. Anyway, let's get on to a little bit of fun now, because I want to talk a little bit about Peter Pan. So, Peter Pan, yes. Hello, Peter. How are you? Peter Pan. Obviously, everybody knows about Peter Pan. It's been one of those types of stories that has been romanticized over and over. There's about 16 different versions just in the Peter Pan universe, let alone the anime versions, etc., etc. There are so many others that are have been created. Now, it was created by J.M. Barrie, and it's obviously, some of you know, it's about a mischievous boy who can fly, but never grow up, and he spends his childhood in a never-ending childhood, or spends his time in a never-ending childhood, and his adventures on a mystical island, and lives in a lovely place called Neverland. Now, when you talk about Neverland, obviously Peter Pan has been made as Peter Pan and this, and Peter Pan and Peter Pan done in 1930s, 1920s, done in the 1980s, etc. But then back in the 2000s, they went, well, we've done so many different Peter Pans, let's now call it Neverland. And one of the better ones was actually, one of my favourites was the Finding Neverland, which was in 2004. But then there was also Return to Neverland, which was actually in 2002, which is kind of bizarre because it was before Finding Neverland in 2004. Go figure that one. And then obviously there was just Neverland, which was in 2011. So there's been a bunch of these different Peter Pan adaptations, should I say, that have graced the screen. Now, the thing I find when you have again, well, let's talk about technology, because we're going to be looking at that in a second when we highlight the very first one, which we'll talk about in a second. The technology has changed. The sword work and what people expect has changed. So you can see that in some of the stuff that we're going to see, and in the execution of certain things in the films and the adaptations. One of the hardest things I think you're going to find, and you'll see this in the first one we're going to highlight, is the ability for a young person to do sword work correctly, unless they've had a lot of training. Today, they would probably more likely choose somebody that has had some experience in weapons at that age, rather than somebody that did not, or they will train them for 2 or 3 months to get them up to speed, to actually make them look like they are a competent sword fighter, or action star, if you like. Because a lot of the people, Peter Pan was only supposed to be 10, 12 years old, really, and all the sword work and the flying through the air was interesting, but sometimes looked a little corny. Now, the first one we're going to look at is Peter Pan. It's with Jacob Isaacs, as you can see here. Jacob looking a bit green in this particular shot, but it was with Jacob Isaacs and Jeremy Supner. Now, obviously, Jason was in Highlander for a while, and for one episode, and he obviously went on to do Harry Potter and The Patriot. It was very intense. Of course, in Harry Potter, his intensity really won through, and as it does in The Patriot. And but in this one, he plays obviously he's playing Captain Hook, as you can tell there. But the actual sword work was interesting. Let's take a look a little bit at the sword work to start with here. This is him starting up with Pan flying through. Now, if you look at Peter's first cut when he came through there, it's so wide you would never use a sword in that particular manner. We're going to constantly go through this. Look at it here as he comes through. His arm is not even bent. It's straight. You would never cut somebody with an arm straight like this, coming through like this. You'd have to have some sort of bend in it to actually allow it to move. So that was the first thing. Second thing is, obviously, this was done in the early 2003, when wire work, after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that created all this wire work from China, had come in. So he looks like he's flying, but it's a little static in the way that happens, and that didn't change for a number of years. Again, you have here the that cut like that, and then this block, which is obviously so that they can talk, and that again is another little Hollywood motion movement of being able to sort of have a chat while you're actually having a sword fight. The next one, let's look at the next piece here. This one here is a little later in the fight, and as you can tell, what they've done is there's a couple of pieces I want to mention here. Is here they've got over his shoulder. Now I don't even know if it was him actually doing that sword work, because it's over his shoulder here, and all you're seeing is Jason replying to that sword work, which looks good, but it was shot tight. Why was it shot tight? It was shot tight because wide it didn't look very good. I guarantee it. That's probably why they shot tight. And again, when you look at the way he parries there, his arm is straight up. You never parry with an arm straight up like this. He goes up straight up like this. It never happens. See it right there? It doesn't work like that. You have to bend. It's like anything. You're bending when you do that. So there's a lot of little small things as to why they actually had to shoot this movie very tightly like this. Now, obviously, they had all the spinning of the sword work, which was really good. They have him captured later on, which was really interesting. But there's just certain things in this one for me, when I watched the sword work and the story a little bit, it wasn't as interesting, I don't think, as some of the other ones that were produced after this piece here. So I'm going to move on to the next one, which I wanted to do, which was Hook. Dustin Hoffman and Robin Williams. Now, Hook, slightly different. Obviously, you have Robin Williams in this one, who is now a 40-year-old Peter Pan who's never grown up. That was pretty much what Robin Williams was, I think, as a human being. He was, a very lively. He never lost the kid in him, and I think he was a perfect casting for that when he came in to do it. Now, playing opposite Dustin Hoffman, I would never have thought Dustin Hoffman would have done something like this, but he always is amazing. Hoffman, he creates these characters. He had a gap in his tooth in this particular instance here, and played him very much. And he called him Peter. He didn't call him Peter. He called him Peter. So it was kind of like a mixture between, because obviously Peter Pan is really an English version. It was created, and a lot of it have English accents in it. Then it becomes a little bit more Americanized, and with Dustin Hoffman going in this particular instance, it became an mid-Atlantic version in the two. And so I kind of found this a very entertaining one. I watched it when it first came out, actually. It was very entertaining because both the actors in it were interesting to watch. So let's just look at the first clip that we have here. And this one, we talked about the wire work that they did. If you look at the way he comes into this, a lot smoother this time, but again, it didn't kind of feel like he was flying. This was done in 1991, when, flying wasn't really done. I mean, you didn't have a lot of wire work in flying. But in this particular instance, you have him flying in this way to talk to Hook, right? This is a story point that I find a little weird. But he's talking to him here, and then he's talking, let's have a little fight. So let's take our jackets off on the ship, and now let me jump off the ship. Why is he jumping off the ship? I'm like, you just jumped on it to go and have a fight. So why are you now jumping off it again? That was just kind of, I think because they were like, flying. We've not done one of these before. Let's do this again. And let's fly him as much as possible. So I think that was the reason behind this. Although, both these actors were very competent in what they did. Obviously, I don't think that was Robin Williams doing that particular stunt. Now, the sword fight. Let's look a little bit about the sword fight itself.
To die would be a great
positioning is great.
That's
obviously, they have an on-guard position, which is a defensive position. And you have some very interesting little pieces that Hoffman does. I'm not so sure that this was him doing the other side of the fight with either Robin Williams himself or the stunt person. I think it was really a mixture of the two. When you saw the cut that went over his head, there was no reason for the cut over his head. He didn't duck. So there was just a couple of things again that looked very flashy and very movement wise, but they didn't really make me feel like it was a fight going on. And that's the reason. That's what it was like back in the 90s, and that you would do something for the film version of things, not necessarily the actual action portion of the fight itself. Now the next one we've got, this one here is them coming again. This sword, I don't think that's that again. He moves it out of the way there. There's no game, James. Attack here. But what I loved here about this was Robin Williams, you know, doing.
I better die.
Doing that foot thing that he did. This foot thing.
Ain't no game, James.
I'm not so sure that was it. That was kind of like, ha ha, let's talk about it. That's Robin Williams all over the place. So that's what an actor does. He brings in the extra that is created in the character.
Ain't no game, James.
It's not really, I mean, first of all, you wouldn't go back with just having my sword down and going back, right? And necessarily, the sword work here is fine, but it's also very...
Ain't no game, James.
That's what happens when you have a kids program. You don't really care about the aggression portion of it. You're caring about the vision of it. Job of doing that.
No game, James.
The next one we're going to talk about. This one is the last fight that they had. Again, became a little bit over the top. So I love the acting in this one. I loved it for the story and the characterization and the fun that they had with it. And I think both of them did a great job. But as a sword thing, you can see that there are many reasons why you know, you have professionals do certain things sometimes, and what the audience expects today compared to what it was like back in the 90s or the early 2000s in the way that sword work or action was actually presented to people. All right, so that kind of concludes my my pan sort of review this morning. I want to go back to a couple of your questions now, and you know, it's been an interesting ride. I mean, I'm looking at these films now. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've had an interesting career, and now I've had other things. There's a few things happening, I think, in 2023 that I'm hoping to be able to announce in another. Well, maybe another couple of months, maybe, hopefully. But you know, the things change in the movie industry a lot. And somebody asked me what profession other than what I'm doing now would I like to be in. And to be totally honest with you, I don't see any other profession that I'd like to do. I mean, yeah, I do it for the money, you know, but I've been so graced with being able to see a lot of different places. I've been graced with the ability to learn from so many different cultures, to meet so many different people, to have to be given respect, which I think there's a lot of things that we lack sometimes in life, and when it's given to you and it means something to somebody, it's much more than what anything else could be in life. You know, money's one thing, but people saying, well, you changed my life, or people saying that what you did was something that helped me and my father or my mother have a relationship, or, you know, those types of things. Those are the changes that you are able to physically do in this world. And I've said it before, is, you know, when you when you die, you it's not about how much money you've earned, it's about how many lives you've affected in a good way, hopefully. And so that's that I think is a very important thing to understand, that we need to be affecting people's lives around us, you know. And I think that's something that I've always you know, I want to leave my kids saying, you know, not that I was the best movie star, but, you know, he taught me something, that I can take on and help grow this human psyche a little bit further. So that I hope is going through. Now, another question was about Darius. Now, Darius. Darius. Werner Stocker, who played Darius. Somebody asked him, was he the chosen one? Was he going to be the one to win at the end of the gathering? Who knows that? I have no idea about that. Because Darius's character, really lasted a very short period of time, and he was a really instrumental portion of MacLeod's learning curve, and that's what they wanted to show. When you're in the first season of any show, there's a lot of information. It's very hard the first 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 episodes, because they're not only trying to create a show that is interesting, but to give a lot of background information as well. So sometimes it comes off as useless information that you go, why am I learning this? I want to learn about this and that. Darius was one of those things. He played by Werner. Werner was a really interesting individual and played him very laid back, very much what Mythos had done. And I think both of them looked at it from the point of view of like, well, I've been around this long. Does all this stuff affect me? Does all that stuff in the life affect you now that you're 50, 40, 60 years old, 70 years old, whatever it is? Does it affect you as much as it did when you were 20? That's where I think Darius was interesting, was that he saw things as what they were. What we have when we're younger is the ability to be emotional and not subjective to things, much like a emergency response. They don't react to a situation, they respond to it. Same thing as Darius. Darius was one of those people who had seen so many things that now he was responding to life and teaching MacLeod about life and how to respond. MacLeod's brain wasn't there yet. Even when he was with him in the present day, MacLeod had learnt so much in those periods. And you can see the difference between when he first met Darius to when he actually sat down and played chess with him. There was a different MacLeod because of what some of the things that Darius had taught him along the way. And yet he still wasn't in the frame of mind that Darius was, nor was he in the frame of mind as Mythos was. They were two different things. Mythos took it to the point of like, well, I'm going to survive no matter how, and it doesn't matter how I'm going to do it, just as long as I survive. MacLeod's point of view, I don't think would ever change from the point of you can't deal with that like that. I don't deal with life in that particular way. I deal with life throughout human emotion and reaction. So you have to understand there is also a different character playing different emotions and different needs and different wants, so they behave slightly differently, yet their basic thing between Darius and Mythos was the same. They'd seen so much that the way that they treated life was slightly different. So whether he was going to be the chosen one to win at the end of the gathering, maybe that's what it was, is do you learn everything that there is at the gathering? And what is the gathering? All the immortals coming together to chop their heads off. I don't know if that was what it necessarily meant. What did the gathering mean to you? What was it to you? What was it? Was it a fight, or was it the coming of finding the one that was the most enlightened? And I think the closest thing I ever saw to that was in the Highlander, very first Highlander movie, where, and I've told you this one before, was when Conor McLeod is on the beach with Sean Connery, Ramirez, and Ramirez says, run, and he's running with a horse. And he's not running to beat the horse, but he feels the horse's energy. That is you're now going from the tactile or the things that we learn on Earth, which is everything we have, all the stuff we have, to a higher state of being. And that's where McLeod had touched, Conor McLeod had touched at that point where he's actually feeling the energy and the heart of the animal that he's racing. And that maybe is what the gathering is all about, is about being enlightened, being something a little bit above. So are you that enlightened to become the chosen one who can teach the rest of humanity or move humanity to another place? That was just my, portion of it. All right, here's another fun one. Somebody asked me about, can I play the bagpipes? Hell no! I can't play the bagpipes. They're amazing how to do it, because you've got to squeeze you have to squeeze and play at the same time. I used to play the recorder, but I don't think it's quite the same thing. No, I can't play the bagpipes. No. Let's put that to bed right away. All right, so somebody says, there was kind of a fun thing. What's my favourite word? Well, depends really what country you're in. Favourite words, to me, being English, one of my favourite words I love to hear, but not when I say a lot or I say it at the right times, is interesting. In England, interesting doesn't mean, oh, that's really an interesting thing to do. It has a double meaning to it. Like people, I'll give an example of that. When somebody is invited to, you invite somebody to a play, and the play isn't that great, they will say one or two things in England. They won't turn up to the person and say, "Oh yeah, it kind of sucked. I didn't really like it that much." It was. They would turn around and they go, "That was really interesting," because it says that was interesting. Was it interesting in a good way? Not so sure. Was it interesting in a bad way? Not so sure either. They leave it sort of ambiguous. The other thing they would say, which is a very English, very stagey type of thing, they would say to them, they go up to the person whose play they've just seen. They would say, "Oh, that was very brave. It's very brave," which basically meant that should have done it. Basically. Other favourite word, I try not to say the same word over and over again. And although when you are trying to remember something, I think the thing I say the most a lot of the time is because we all do that, because we're trying to find the next thing we want to say. I think it doesn't hurt occasionally, but sometimes it is annoying if you hear somebody say The other one that drives me nuts is like. Like. Because it's like I'm going down the road, and when she came down, it was like her coming down, and she had to, and I'm sitting there going, no, like means something entirely different. It's not something that you use all the time, or in the right context, should I say. The other one, which is what's the other one that is always used? It likes that, like it. Oh, right. In English, the English go in London. They go, "You all right, mate? Yeah." You go later, and all right. Yeah, you all right? Right. You all right? You all right? We all have those words. What are your words? And we kind of stick them on our blog or somewhere else. Let us know some of the fun words you drive you nuts, because I think some of them drive me nuts as well. I'm going to leave this last one because I think this one is kind of, because we're now running out of time. We're close to the end here. Somebody said, if heaven exists, what would I like to hear God say? I don't think I've been a stellar human being. And if you say you have been, I think you might be fooling yourself a little bit. Because we all have trials and tribulations. And I think the path that we tread along the road we fall off sometimes. And we do things that are less than good. As long as I have not hurt somebody, as long as I've not taken a life or done something where it is against the natural run of things. This is where I have a problem with religion, because a lot of religions, including Christianity, basically say, well, you can't do this, you can't do this, and then, but if you do it this way, it's okay to do it. Thou shalt not kill. Real simple Bible. It doesn't say thou shalt not kill unless that guy ticks you off. It doesn't say that. It just says basically this is it. But we as human beings tend to change it for our own likes. We kind of go, well, okay, this is, our version of this is what it should be. And sometimes I find that texts that were written so long ago were translated or adjusted for the society that needed them to be adjusted for in their favor. So I'm kind of a little bit on the side. So what I'd like God to say, I would like God say, well, you did well, try better next time. So I don't think, oh, you did a great job, because I don't think it's the only time we come. I think we constantly come back and learn our mistakes. I think we basically have to turn around and say, okay, I did this. Let me see if I can rectify it the next time I get to this. Think of this yourselves. How many relationships have you been in that are the same type of person that was the relationship you had before? We all have a type, and we constantly do that. And why is that? Is it because we like that type of person? No, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's that type is something we have to solve in our own situation. Once we figure that out with that relationship, we've grown and we've learned. And I would like to have grown than the last time I was existing on this planet or in this universe, because I think that's part of what we are. We're souls, and the soul exists. I don't think it doesn't exist. It's been actually proven that there is a micro weight that leaves a body when it dies. So some spirit leaves. So where does that go? So I would love to hear God or an entity say to me, okay, you did this time. These were the things you did right. Now go back and try this lot and see if you can get it done better this time. And eventually we might get to that, what happened at the gathering. We might be that enlightened one or that chosen one that changes society and changes our existence to a better place. So with that said, I hope you guys had a fabulous Thanksgiving, and remember to share this and like this thing. I know this is going to be just for you guys at the inner circle, but there'll be small little pieces that you can tell people about and share with other people as well, which we will be doing on our YouTube page. But these lives are only for you guys, really. So we want to sort of keep them special for you. But Christmas is coming. Have a fabulous Christmas. We will have another live before Christmas or just after Christmas. I'm not sure which one we're going to do. It's going to depend on scheduling. But wherever you are, have fun. Don't eat too much. Hopefully I'll see you at the Sword Experience. I know some of you are coming to the Ogdensburg in New Jersey. And hopefully I'll see some of you in Paris next year as well. But until then, happy holidays. I'll see you soon.